And we're off. Okay.
Great.
Thanks, Matt.
Yes. So this is something we do a ton of on our side because we're like a nonprofit and don't have the federal funding, and particularly in light of like the shifting state funds and that sort of thing. Part of the reason we're gonna likely to be able to survive for still years is the ability to do grant writing. There are so many other sources of income out there, particularly for low income first gen students. Like you all work with the perfect population that if folks want to find ways to give money either to education or to youth, like we are the perfect vessel to do that. So what I wanted to do here today was talk more around like the micro grants. And obviously, we do these massive big federal grant applications that are exhausting and 60 pages, but there are like a lot of other opportunities to secure additional funding that can help your program. So what I kind of wanted to do today is go over just kind of what micro grants are, why they matter, the role they can play in Trio, where do you find them, how can you collaborate with your institution or not, right? Like OTA can help you as well. We'll talk through that. Um, what are the kind of like projects that funders typically support? Can I just get operating support so I can like pay my staff a fair wage and maybe the Trio grant isn't quite enough to sustain what we're doing? How do I get that operating support? What is like a process that we can put together as like a team or internally to kind of like monitor and pursue these sorts of things? And then just share some of the success stories and examples of stuff I've seen either other programs do or I've done in collaboration with other programs here in the state, and then just kind of open things up at the end. Um, this all gets recorded. It goes on our YouTube afterwards. The chat, I just threw in the PDF of the slides here, so you have information as well. So for starters, when we're looking at micro grants, it's typically stuff you see under $10,000. They can go up to 25. I've seen some applications that aren't terribly complex, but for the kind of stuff you are likely looking at applying for that is quite simplistic, it's often under $10,000, and they are short term, usually never more than a year. Many of them are project based, and a lot of times you'll just see one time funding opportunities. Stuff will pop up. There'll be a pool of funds, there'll be an initiative that you are a good candidate for, but you can't necessarily expect it year over year, through an entire like 5 year grant cycle, for example. The micro grants are really ideal for like smaller scale project. When I say project, it's kind of like ideas. Like, what is my idea that this is funding, and how does it maybe different or new from what we typically do in day to day? You can use it to get supplies that maybe you can't typically buy on grant funds or a little more expensive. It can be um, or events that you're looking to plan, or even just kind of the start of a bigger initiative, right? If I can get the seed money, maybe my institution, or maybe this is something we want to see grow, but we're looking for like the jump starts and to get a funder to maybe back that kind of work. I can tell you that, again, the federal TRIO grants, if you've ever written those or been involved, are immensely complex. Most of these applications are not at all. They are pretty small. They gather general contact information around who administers the project. They usually want some kind of background or information on just your program generally, and how it probably fits into the institution. Because what you are often going to struggle with is funders are probably know about your college or university. They probably don't know Trio, and they particularly don't know like your Trio. So you're kind of explaining kind of generally what Trio is and also your specific role within the institution and why you're different and are like limited in your funding compared to what the institution sees or gets. So that is like my world in a nutshell. People that have no idea what Trio is, let alone like our role as the nonprofit that's kind of separate from you all, right? We don't provide direct service. So a lot of our work is around like how do you set the table to give people that baseline of understanding to kind of know where you fit in and the role you play in helping students like the ones we serve succeed in higher ed. And then you get to like, well, what is your specific ask? Now, sometimes those can be the same thing because you're looking for more general operating expenses, but often most of these micro grants want to go to like specific projects, right? So like then you kind of describe specifically where their funds are going to go to help support what you're doing within your program and for your students. And then often they ask for a budget, but I mean, like some of the templates I've seen, it is like 3 lines, right? It is like income, yours. There's no other pending income and expenses. It's like I'm buying laptops for students, and that's it, right? So this does not need to be some overly complicated budget process. And I think when you think about who the people are that give these away. Often it's like board of directors and volunteers who serve in these committees who are trying to digest this stuff. So simplicity often can work to your advantage versus some like monstrosity of a program. Even though it may make you look fancy, it can sometimes be intimidating for those who are reading it. So why microgrants can play a role and why they can matter within TRIO programs is it really can just help supplement funding for the stuff that's unallowable in often cases. You want to do more events, buy more food, offer gift cards to students for incentives, just get them more engaged. Like there's all these things that we kind of know and have dabbled in because we've had access to some of these kind of unallowable funds through state funding in Oregon. But like you've kind of identified, like, man, there if we just had, or maybe you're lucky enough to be at one of these colleges that have that unrestricted pool, like it's just such a wealth of things you can do that you really can't usually through federal funds. So it can help supplement that. It also can just give the kickstart either for your institution or just you and your staff. Like I have cool ideas, innovative ideas. I want to expand services and just do a lot more of this thing we already do kind of well. Or I would love to do this big, awesome event here, but I don't have it in my budget to do that kind of stuff. And I don't feel like dealing with my PO to try to navigate that or go ask my institution who's firing people left and right now to like give me extra money to do this stuff. So these programs can be a beacon to kind of give you the pilot money to go ahead and move forward. It also can help you build community and institutional recognition. These are easy. Oftentimes, a funder like wants some press, right? Like that's part of the reason why they do it. If they're supporting your program, they want folks to know about it. I'm going to use, like Suzanne was on here, Blue Mountain Community College. We had
Mhm.
found like a grant. There was like a tribal foundation kind of near Pendleton that just gives out small grants. So we applied for funding a couple times now to help do like technology support, whether it's laptops, calculators, textbook codes, just some stuff that would go directly to all the SSS students out of the Blue Mountain Community College program. So we've won it twice over now, and they want just something, to promote it. So we go to the Blue Mountain Community College marketing folks, they get it a press release out. There's some local news coverage that covers them, and suddenly both the foundation, the institution, TRIO programs, like everybody's getting some recognition in a way that can help legitimize you and your program and show you I mean, you're already a moneymaker by the definition of you existing, but that you're capable of doing it even above and beyond that and helping bring recognition into just the wider community that can be really beneficial, particularly in times when TRIO is constantly under threat. And we're trying to prove why we exist and why we matter to folks. So, and I always like to say, like the beauty of Trio, even though we write these big complex grants, they tend to be a little vague-ish, like how you do your day to day and like how you impact the student in front of you is so broad and can be so adaptive to what their needs are and just creative in nature. Um, and micro grants allow you to go way above and beyond even kind of the creativity within the trio world, right? Because we have those costs that are allowable, unallowable, but there's no reason you have to stop there within your budget or your institutional budget. Like there are so many other folks who want to support students, and this is your avenue to go out and kind of get the funding to do that because everybody can't just you don't want to be in a place where you're expected to just always do more, work harder, work more hours. Like that's not sustainable for us. We want to find folks who can actually like partner with us and give us the resources necessary to make the improvements we want to see. So where do you find micro grants? And for this case, I really urge you to focus on local. Now, what I do is very much at like the regional state level. Um, that can still be successful, but often the bigger folks, they are going to be funders where like your college or institution is likely not going to want you as like a rogue trio program to go ask for some $40,000 funds. They're probably going to want to ask on behalf of the whole college because they want to build a new wing and they have some like $500,000 ask they want to put in. They don't want to blow their one chance of getting funded from Oregon Community Foundation or Ford Family Foundation on like your $3,000 like guest speaker request. So we'll get to that in a second on like working with your institution. But the local, like a lot of what we have done over the past, almost 4 years is we find foundations. A lot of times they just want to have an impact in the counties in which they exist in. So this is why we've done a lot of the technology resources down in like Coos Bay, Curry County. There's like a billion foundations. I cannot believe how many organizations exist on like the southern coast that want to give students the money to these students. We've had like a lot of success down there, found a lot of resources. Southern Oregon, kind of the rural communities, Bend area, Pendleton, we found a lot of folks. But again, I'm just looking on larger databases and those sorts of things. I'm kind of jumping on my talking points here, but I think what you need to do, having been in that community, maybe knowing people at your institution, is identify like who is it in this space that like gives away money, wants to make an impact in our community, because there's no reason that like you shouldn't be part of that conversation or at least throw your name in the hat. So going to my talking points here. We use Grant Station. Grant Station is this massive database of funders where you can just look at profiles of like how much money do they give away, shows due dates, shows you kind of the general kinds of things that they fund. So you can like filter out for education and you can just look at individual opportunities. It is like a paywall access thing, but I have learned that many colleges and institutions have access to this, right? They may have a login done through the library. And you may have to like do it physically in the library. Like it's not a thing they love to get out there because they are pretty spendy. But a lot of big institutions have some access to that or something similar of just these huge databases that you can search and maybe find some opportunities. Um, so I would maybe look into that if this is something you're wanting to do and like do a bigger kind of comb of canvassing kind of the area. um, Local foundations. So this is where, a lot of what I wrote here, these are the bigger ones. So there are community-based foundations. So the big one is like Oregon Community Foundation. Picture them. We're all familiar with like the OSAC and the OSAC scholarships. They are like that for foundations. We're like, I don't want to facilitate all of the work of collecting information and making a form and putting crap on my website. So they contact Oregon Community Foundation and go, I want to give away this much money, and they decide how to do it. Oftentimes, it all gets pooled into their um, like spring and fall grant cycles. So like, there's lots and lots of applicants, and then individual funders can kind of pick projects that matter to them and just kind of write a check without having to do a lot of the administrative pieces. But that doesn't mean there aren't things like this within your own local county or community of just like what are the groups that exist that help facilitate funding and money. You can look at that on a family foundation. So we're all pretty familiar with Ford Family Foundation. There's Meyer Memorial Trust, MJ Murdoch Charitable Trust. There's a billion of these. If there's any rich person that died and wanted to leave a legacy, they may have put up like fund in their name. Interest from that goes to the community and makes an impact. Like I have literally found hundreds of these in Oregon. We've applied to a bunch of them, got a few successes, but here is where like identifying who are those people and those organizations that exist within our community because um, they get a little confused at times trying to like fund something like Oregon Trio Association because our scope is large and statewide and is often like very forward facing and thinking in terms of like we're trying to get trio programs funded in your community. That's less easy to understand than like I want to hire a tutor for my students who are right here in your backyard. Like that is much easier for them to digest. Um, Canvassing just like what are those civic and community organizations locally, whether it is Rotary, Kiwanis clubs, Lion clubs, Chamber of Commerce, like all of those are great avenues. Even Chamber of Commerce, even if they don't have like a traditional application that you apply for grants, they just have relationships with all the local businesses. Even if you just send a staff member and go present that, like, hey, if you even have gift cards, meal cards. Like if all I do is give away, a $25 gift card to your restaurant, like that can go a long way for people that have food insecurity and stuff. And you get like an entire kind of community of organizations and businesses that maybe want to throw you some smaller gifts or in kind of benefits on the side. It may not be in that project sense or this big amount of funding, but it's a way to kind of tap into some of the local resources that exist in your community, because they, again, are probably going to want to have an impact on your students and your student population. Um, there's a lot of opportunity on the business sponsored side. You would think when I first started doing this, I thought it would be easier. You just like knock on Nike's door and be like, "Hey, we're in your backyard. Poor kids, like money, please." And like that's not at all how it works. They have like these big, long like grant processes, this review cycles. They only give out some. So like unless you know somebody, if your uncle or you got a neighbor who's got a friend who works for Nike, like if you know person, you get to skip the line, and that's how you see the like random city things with giant PGE banners or Nike banners, and they get massive amounts of funding for fill in the name project. Like if you know somebody, you can get in that way. Let me know. I would love to get in. But for the most part, the bigger ones can be hard to get to. But that doesn't mean like local businesses, kind of like I said with the Chamber of Commerce, they can have a lot of in-kind support, supplies. I have on here the John Deere example. So this is an example I heard at a priority training years ago. Um, it's a program out of Iowa, just like an upper bound program, and they got connected with John Deere because they wanted to like bring some students to like a facility, and it was part of their summer programming. So they did that one year and had like an awesome experience. They wanted to like expand on it in the second year. So they started doing like some mentoring thing and like got a little more involved in their program. And because oftentimes some of these companies have like these big federal grants to help do fill in the blank, whether it's for agriculture or these kind of things, they often have mandates that they're required to a certain percentage of their grants have to go to community support. Like they are dying to find communities of people or students so they can do it around education, where they can like take the work they're doing or the grants they're getting and show that they're also impacting the community, right? The big federal grants, they don't want to just hand you money and then you exist within your region, but you don't really like influence it all. So like there's a mandate that you have to do something. So John Deere started like basically writing $200,000 checks to this UB program in perpetuity because they were just like, we love these guy people, we love what they're doing, their program, their students. So not only are we going to like actively do stuff with them, we're just going to like do these sub grants and just give them funding to like expand STEM access and all this work. So this program has like almost a doubled trio budget because of their like affiliation with this John Deere plant and the relationships they built over time. So there's nothing saying that like you and your organization, this is again where it overlaps with some of the institutional relationships, but you can just work with local businesses and they just love what you do, the students you impact. They even see it potentially as like a pipeline into internships or jobs for students. Like they can just work with you and help fund some of your stuff individually or do whole events on behalf of it and be the primary sponsor. But again, that all comes down to kind of the relationships, right? And your ability to find those people, cultivate that, bring them into the fold so they can like see the impact you have. Um, but it is possible. I did want to touch on credit unions. Credit unions, again, by nature, to call yourself a credit union, you have to have a community impact. So they will often have grant programs individually, and they would love to find ways to impact it. So for them to redistribute their funds to your program, to your students, can be a good win. Same with local banks or utilities, like even a U.S. bank or Bank of America, like they're big. They don't have to do that stuff, but they often like to. That's how they can stay and exist in the communities because they compete with those credit unions who go, those are just the big names. They don't care about you. And to show that they care, they try to do partnerships or they'll even, fly in some financial literacy experts and put on like an entire workshop where you don't have to pay any of it. Like they're dying to show that they're having an impact and like presenting stuff to communities and students and families. So sometimes like they'll cover all those costs affiliated with like a special speaker like that because they want to have impact in your local community. So because we do so much financial literacy stuff where and it's like in the legs and the regs that we're doing that kind of financial economic literacy. Like it's a super easy win to potentially partner with them. Utilities, same thing. A lot of money. They want to show local impact. So there are always opportunities there. Um, it can't hurt to just ask about your college's foundation or advancement office. Sometimes there might just be, if you're at a big enough university, like there might be donors who just go, I want my funds that I'm giving the university not to go to the general fund. I want it to go to the students who need it the most. Like maybe there's a fund that can be created. Again, they're probably going to push back on this, but like there's nothing stopping your foundation from making a trio student scholarship fund that's entirely on its own. And you have donors that want to contribute just to your students so they can see benefits. Or even just asking your foundation for funds. If you're trying to do something a little different, a little above and beyond, I know back in the day at Classic Community College, we had gone to our foundation and asked for like 500 bucks to do like coffee cards, right? Because we were struggling to recruit talent search during COVID. So they just handed us a bunch of money into the TRIO program. We could buy stuff that we typically couldn't do before. So it can't hurt to ask. Oftentimes these are a coworker of yours if you're employed through the institution. So just like get a feel for what do they do and how can we interact? And then I'm jumping ahead to the next slide here a bit, but like make sure that if we're going to pursue some of this other stuff in the micro grant space, we're not stepping on your toes because there's likely somebody at your college whose job it is to go get all these similar kind of funds for like the institution's larger projects. So how can we like play nice? And they might even do a lot of the work and help find opportunities for you in an ideal world. So um, lastly, like if there are student success funds, DEI, innovation funds, retention mini grants, right? Like just learning about some of the funds that your institution has. At the time, back when they had all those COVID relief funds, some schools were like desperate to find ways to spend that money and they kind of took it all and then didn't have a plan to use it. So you might be doing them a solid by giving them outs and opportunities to spend some of these dollars that they have and spend down their own grants that you are like completely unaware of because you're in your own space. So um, I'm going to pause here briefly and just ask, are there any questions at all so far? Okay. I keep mentioning this, but it is essential you collaborate with your institution, right? You want to have that internal coordination because you don't want to duplicate efforts in your advancement or grants office. I heard an example of there was a program. God, it may even be SWAC on. I don't know. There's some like giant mill or some giant funder who was like, look, once a year, the college can ask for literally whatever we want and we'll buy it, right? Um, but if you kind of go around the college, find that person and go, hey, can we have like $4,000 to do a ski trip this winter for our students? They'd be like, oh, that's awesome. Here you go. And then you used your like one credit. Meanwhile, they have like a $890,000 ask to help build a new fill in the blank. And they find out you uh, prevented them from getting it, you will like lose your job, right? So, um, understanding the dynamics at play, what it is they're pursuing, what am I allowed to go pursue in terms of other funds, right? Ford Family Foundation is a perfect example. They have a lot of student scholarship stuff, but there are bigger funds available. Maybe the institution wants to submit applications for their like big funds, but there are also um, like this small one-time funding. There's not even much of an application. It's not a huge competition, but like requests up to $5,000 to provide extra staff training or do strategic plan. Like it's meant often for more nonprofits, but there is like this small little pool that's meant for the little guy. So maybe there's a world in which they go, hey, we don't want you pursuing these like large community grants, but um, yeah, for this capacity building small grants that Ford Family Foundation offers. If there's something that you and your team love to ask for, or you have like this annoying shortage where like crap, my like staff costs are over by like $3,000. Maybe I can submit a request for just that $3,000 to kind of cover this little gap I have in this one academic year. There's a world where like that Ford Foundation capacity building grant is like perfect to fill that gap and doesn't like exclude your institution from applying to bigger stuff. So you want to kind of figure out who is it on my university, or at least make your boss aware if you find stuff you want to pursue because you want to play well together and understand their policies and approval pathways. Because if you are applying, even if your name's on, even if it's the TRIO grant, it's still like the institution, and there may be other folks that need to sign off on these applications. Your business office is going to have to get this and kind of figure out what the heck do I do with this? How do I keep this money separate from your federal funds? So you want to make sure you just understand how those processes work and what you are allowed and are not allowed to do. So you want to ask questions of, does my institution allow me to do direct applications? Will they assist with it, or do they want a fiscal sponsorship? That is where OTA can serve a function. You will see with a lot of foundations, they only want to fund 501c3s, not colleges and universities. We are that. So they even have a name for it, right? Fiscal sponsor. So like you can still write the grant, you can get all the benefits of the grant, but we as a fiscal sponsor, Oregon Trio Association, is kind of applying on behalf of you. And we kind of have this agreement and this partnership that says, the funds are awarded to us, but we are directing them to you, or we'll spend them on behalf of your students. We can even do all the financial transactions, so your whole business office doesn't have to do all that. So it's a great collaboration, but you still want to make sure your institution is aware of it, because what we've had this happen before where we win a grant because we were talking with the TRIO program, and then whoever's in marketing is like, the hell is this? Like I didn't know we were getting a grant. Like you really should run these by us and before. And at the time I was able to kind of be like, well, that was more of our fault, not necessarily the TRIO person's fault at the time, but we want to make sure that there's coordination happening. And then just make sure there's approval, right? You don't want to get in trouble or get fired because you won more money for your students or programs. Like that should be a success and not something you take crap over. All right, so I did want to touch on, because often they want to look at like what are the projects. They love to fund projects more than kind of operating funds. So what are the projects that local funders typically support? And I'm saying this only knowing what I know and what I've done the past 4 years. By no means is this restricted to this list. You can apply for just about anything if you can write it well enough, justify it well enough. But I kind of broke it into these buckets where you can look for workshops or events. Although I often see they don't love one-time things. They want to see something a little more sustainable, a little more programmatic versus like we're doing a one-day event. Just pay for the one-day event or food for the one-day event. But find stuff in career exploration, unique trips, unique programming, leadership opportunities, particularly if they can be a little ongoing or show a bit more of a long-term impact, um, will definitely be appealing to them. You can look for supplies and equipment, whether it's STEM kits, calculators, books, laptops, food for events, particularly if it's student facing, or you're not allowed to buy all this technology to have like a lending library. This is a great way where you're like, listen, we have a bunch of low-income students that don't always have their own calculators or computers or all the expensive stuff they need to succeed in college or in pursuit of college. Um, we would love to just have a lending library. So we're going to take your funds, buy all this stuff, and then we're going to have a process for getting this out to students, bringing it back in, because then you can show multi-year impacts within your students um, in that realm. So that's been one of our most successful, probably micro grant efforts, is around like technology access resources, because for $3,000 grants, like that doesn't pay a staff member 1 month, right? If you're trying to supplement their work, but $3,000 can go a long way if you're getting, resources and technology to lend to students. So, if you're looking for staffing or consulting support, a lot of people like new initiatives, new things. So, a new staff member, new tutor, can be something that qualifies. So, whether that's that or guest speakers, mental health workshops, like just finding ways to kind of bring in outside professionals that you don't have internally, but meet like a need for your students in your program. Family engagement, anything you do around financial literacy nights, parent college tours as well. Just try to like make a bigger ordeal of something to try to get parents to engage with you. Uh, they want to see innovation and innovative pilots. So like give them a reason to think that your peer mentoring program, they're, you know, helping the forefront of something that's going to grow into this awesome uh, peer mentor program, college career pathway pilots, direct employer partnerships. This is where, depending on who's offering the job, you can be like, listen, I'm not like making something up. I want to develop a partnership with you. You give us some grants, some funding, some support, some in-kind support, and like we are going to create a partnership between our Trio program and you as an employer to do tours, to create opportunities, to have mentors come and work with students, and just make it a little more like holistic. They would love that stuff, right? That's not stuff I do because I don't want to like create a relationship when like I don't work with the students directly. I don't want to give you all more work and guarantee partnerships, but like if it's something that works and works for the needs of your students, your population, that can be a really fruitful kind of cycle of benefits that go back and forth with direct employers. So um, many funders, they're going to appreciate measurable outcomes, equity focused initiatives, student stories. The measurable outcomes, they want to see like tangible goals that you're working for. That can sometimes be the hardest thing, but usually we just throw a ballpark number of how many students are going to be impacted, how many are going to show up to this sorts of thing. Unlike the federal, I mean, you got to know your community. Like, there are certainly some areas in Oregon where the equity focused initiatives don't play as well. But I have found, especially now more than ever, because they see that being stripped away at the federal level, there's an even higher elevated desire to fund those things at the foundation and community level because they see there's going to be this big gap. So they want to find a way to like fill that gap and still make sure that some of these programs that are essential are happening. So, um, you don't you can kind of separate yourself from some of the dumb rules we have to follow right now as it relates to the federal government and what like we can say and can't say and how we're allowed to present ourselves. Like this is a different audience in that sense. Um, can I get operating support? You can, but it's often more nuanced. So it is less common. It's typically the like much bigger foundation and organizations, but they are still available. And by general operating support, I mean just paying your bills. Like I just want a chunk of funds that are considered unallowable to pay staff, do all the other stuff that just can supplement my TRIO grant funding. Um, the foundations are often going to require strong rationale. They want to see equity work. They want to see how you're like integrating your students in your decision making. Like you often have to prove yourself quite a bit more. This is them kind of funding the general vibes of who you are and your mission versus like a specific project. So can be done. These are the best kinds of funding because there's just the least amount of strings attached to them. You can spend it on whatever you want. They are funding you because they see you do great work and they trust you to keep doing more great work if they give you money. These are OTA's golden goose, right? Like I pursue this like nothing else because I don't like this is what pays for my salary and Robin's salary and all the programming and just Zoom uh, memberships and all the things, right? Just pays the bill. So they're the best kind, but often the most challenging to locate. And they have so much competition, even regionally and locally. So you're looking for tips, though. You want to frame uh, oftentimes your operational requests within a project-based model. So like, it's even if it's general operating support, you still kind of present it in the sense of a project or a coordinator for a new initiative or a mentor program or tutoring efforts or a new staff member to focus on mental health. Like you can still frame it around a particular project that feels new and innovative and needed, even if the fund itself is general operating support, because you just want to look sexy and appealing to the people reading and scoring your application that this is something we have to fund to make an impact for these students. Um, the hardest part obviously is like, okay, this all sounds awesome, but like, how do I build a process to both find these, apply for them, monitor them? Should I start winning these things? Right? It just kind of, if you think managing one federal trio grant, budget is annoying. If you have, 14 revenue sources like we do, that's 14 budgets, 14 different reports. You have to, every transaction has to be coded properly for like which is going on which. So like it can become a lot. So you want to build a good process to do that. So first and foremost, you got to designate somebody who's going to be your point person in terms of like tracking and evaluating grant leads. This is the person who finds them, kind of does the initial scrub and just identifies, all right, here's the group that feels most realistic for us to apply for and win. You need to have honest conversations like how much time is this going to take and what is the likelihood of winning and is it worth it, because you might find opportunity it's like wow, this is $100,000, but it's kind of like running an entirely new program, right? Maybe it's federal funds, it's a big application, it's a lot of reporting. I'm just kind of creating a whole nother job for myself. This is not just like supplemental funding. Is that worth my time and effort when like I don't have a ton of time to designate for this? Or even if the application is very simple, if it's like $1,000 grant, um, there's going to be a ton of applicants. It's a nationwide opportunity. Like, is this worth my time? Like, maybe not, depending on the time of year that you have going on. So that person's job is just to like have an honest conversation of like, is this realistic? Should we pursue it? Sometimes it's helpful just to like put some shots up, right? Like get some attempts out there and see what works, what doesn't work. But um, there's definitely a lot of work on that front. Uh, I really recommend finding some way to create an opportunity tracker. So just some spreadsheet that shows the opportunities, what are the deadlines, who are the contacts, links to like the application online, what are eligibility, what's the status of these, some place you can go as a team to look at all that information. I'm kind of tempted to not even. I'll show you briefly what it looks like from OTA. Now, I understand I'm doing like one of these a week ish. Uh, Welcome to the OTA Grant Management Tracker. This is everything that was due between May 31st and August 15th, is what you're looking at here. And it just keeps going. And then there's all of our previously funded opportunities. So for every one of these, right, it's status, it's who's in charge. This is like Monday.com. So every one of these has like entire chats and files attached to them, due dates, links, timelines. What are our asks? What are the awarded amounts, right? I can go over, there's a million comments of who's the contact, who's the phone number. Um, so you can make it as intense as you want it to, but just have some system for that shows you the snapshot of kind of monitoring what is out there, what's my timeline, what's due coming up here soon. So I really recommend having some version of like a toolkit ready. When I say toolkit, I just mean it could be a Google Doc, shared Google folder. If you're on Teams, right, OneDrive, just some standard document that kind of has your general narrative around what your Trio program is, what your project ideas are, some base version of a starting like budget template. If you have letters of support from your institution, from folks like OTA, like are there templates for that? Again, this is where you don't need to like go be a grant writer to do all this stuff. Uh, don't be afraid to rely on Chat GPT a little bit to mess with this stuff. In part because when you're creating the initial toolkit and all the standard narratives, you are writing all that stuff. But what you will often find is like, okay, here's my version of our history and the role we play here on our campus. But like, it's 500 words. What happens when I need to do it in 150? What about when I have to do it in like 1,000? What happens when they ask it, but like in a different way? So like you're kind of creating your toolkit of like, here's a bunch of responses we've used before, and then how do we like adapt it for the next question. The more of these grants you write for, the easier this gets because you just get more and more versions of answering similar questions. And you can kind of like slowly tweak that over time and adapt your answers and even like try changing the titles of your project, right? It's just kind of an experimentation of what works and what is appealing to folks. You have all your different budget templates. So once you've done a pretty good job on one or two of them, you're just kind of modifying those requests moving forward. So the first few applications may take you some time. And then, like, if I'm being honest, like, there's some opportunities that take less than 10 minutes to apply for because we kind of have all of these historical documents of prior grants we submitted. So if we know that we're applying for like a copy and paste version of this other project, we just have to make it fit within this budget request and their questions they're asking on the application. It's relatively simple. So, lastly, is like, don't be afraid to like review and reflect. Not don't be afraid. Don't neglect the part where you review and reflect and like debrief after you get each decision. I can tell you almost all of them are no's, but that doesn't mean you did a bad job. What we hear from most funders is like they may have money to fund 40 projects. They're going to see 800 applications. Okay. Like it is an unbelievably overwhelming amount of information that comes in to these foundations. So like even years where like we've been funded by somebody before and then we didn't get it the next year. It could be as simple as like, look, we're trying to like spread the wealth. Your application was awesome. That's why you got funded the first year, but we're just simply not going to fund you year two because we just have a rule. And they may not tell you that, but it may just kind of be the reality, right? Um, we got a few no's a few months ago, because like Department of Ed was under so much like uncertainty, people saw Trio and this federal grant program and just assumed we weren't going to exist. So we started getting no's because they just assumed Trio was tied to Department of Ed was disappearing. And you wish they'd call you and be like, oh no, actually, we're kind of separate. We predate Department of Ed. We're not going anywhere. But they don't often do that. So um, yeah, just have honest conversations and like figure out what can we tinker with, what do we probably need to tweak. You can ask for feedback from them. Sometimes you get it, usually not. Um, how OTA can help you. So I am totally on board with reviewing or helping edit grant applications, right? Particularly if it's your first time. We've done this quite a bit. Myself and Christopher, who's like a consultant that's been working with us for almost 4 years now, like we're totally fine just kind of reviewing and giving you some feedback at the bare minimum. We can write them in collaboration with you as well, right? Especially if we are serving as like that fiscal sponsor, you're wanting us to apply. I'm totally fine with you kind of helping come up with the concept, but if you want us to apply as the 501c3, like let us know. Like I am totally on board to do that, pay all the bills. Like even if you just want us to hold the money and then you and your students, your program get the benefits. I've done that with a number of different programs and funders before. So if you're needing help identifying or recommending grant leads based on your region or goals, again, you can just reach out to me individually and I can kind of try to do my best to let you know what I'm seeing or what I'm kind of aware of within your particular region. Um, and if you're looking for templates that you can reuse for like future grants or just like what are some of those if I'm making that like initial toolkit, like what are some of the questions I should answer that just will give me the foundations to respond to all the narrative questions I get in the future. you know we're here to support you in those efforts too, so it's all extra work. This feels kind of separate and in the writing sense in the grant writing world, but we're kind of here to help support that and want to see people do that. So just quickly, some of the successes and examples we've seen. We've had, I think, probably 7 to 8 technology grants funded up to now that helps get laptops, calculators, textbooks for folks. So that one has been really successful. A lot of times we talk about these one-time opportunities. So that Aspire, basically some of the money we got from the states, there was this pool of funds that wasn't getting used from that $5 million approved 2 years ago. So OSAC created this grant. It was like the Aspire capacity building grant. So I know of two at least pre-college programs that applied and got like 30 and $60,000 of funding a piece. Just these one-time grants that just help support operating funds and some of their summer programming going on this summer. It was a one-time offer, but something that they jumped on. We supported them a little bit in kind of their efforts and got funded in a way that was like unbelievable, and kind of assisted in the work they did. But tell this is it's not just $30,000. Right now, it's up to $85,000. They've been awarded 3 straight years. The OSU Upper Bound students get to go up to like rural Alaska. They like fly into Fairbanks and then drive another like 10 hours almost in the Arctic Circle. People aren't allowed up there, just researchers and this like, whoever students in the summer they bring up there. So these students have had this opportunity because there was the director found some partnership with some professor from Maine and from Alaska, and they were like wanting to bring students. So they wanted to do this, but they needed a nonprofit to apply. So for 3 straight years, we've been the nonprofit that applies, and they're able to send all these students up to Alaska as part of this efforts. With Battelle as the name of like the funder and the organization that's been funding the opportunity. So we've been able to kind of create this, I know, awesome opportunity for students through using us and just kind of some of those relationships. And um, Ford Family, like I said, I know of some programs who have reached directly out to Ford Family and have gotten some like supplemental funds with short-term challenges or needs or staffing issues that they've dealt with before. ECMC, we've obviously done we got funded previously and there were opportunities to just like do workshops or just extra funds around FAFSA support there as well. And then I sent it on the listserv today, but COE has a thing going out there. This is just for SSS programs, but they're going to give $10,000 to 3 programs that just are showing that, what's the language?
It's for
I
community
had
colleges.
community colleges. There we go. So they just want to see if you've really integrated well with your campus or feel like you are, you know, worthy of their, like they definitely want high-end, high-performing programs that have like integrated really well with the overall student support services offered on campus, you could be a candidate. So this is just one of those where like literally today, they didn't know we were doing this webinar, but opportunity pops up and there's a chance at $10,000 of just unrestricted funds that could be, the difference between do we cut our staff time or can we like, use this and kind of, especially in year 1 and 2 in an SSS grant cycle, uh, you know, support some of our funds. So those are just a few examples, but I do want to just open things up here while we still got a good 10 minutes left and just see if there are any questions or thoughts or comments from the crowd.
I have a question. What kind of back-end reporting do these types of grants want if you're awarded?
So usually a lot of them use like it's almost like a version of a Google form. Like there's entire companies who kind of build forms and reporting forms for these foundations. So in my case, I find a ton of them are kind of these like survey monkey style forms where you just answer a couple questions and like, all right, did you fulfill the project needs? What are some reporting metrics? And then like upload a budget that just shows how you spent the funds. Like they just want to see a fiscal report showing it and then just a few narrative questions, but they are not usually terribly complex.
Nothing like an
the
APR kind of thing.
no,
That was
and
my
like
fear.
Yeah, that's what Winter is asking. I was like, I know where this is going.
no student level data, right? I have
Okay.
yet to have anybody that wants to see student level data for like the stuff I've done. So they just want to kind of know generally what did you do, and if you can have photos, right, or some student stories, they want it because that's the stuff they want to put on their website or put in the newsletter. Like they just want to know that you use the funds well. Maybe they'll do like a site visit, but that almost never really happens. You're encouraged to invite them. That's one thing I struggle with because I'm just kind of like filling in for the work you all do. So like they would love to get invited to stuff if you're doing a big event or that so they can like see the impact. And that probably makes it more likely to get funded in the future too. But they're often quite simple.
Thanks.
I remember it was Aspire Gear Up. This was probably 10 years ago, was doing mini grants for college trips. And so we used to we had like 2 or 3 years where like every single college trip we did, we just had to do a pre-test and a post-test. So it was a pre-survey about what students knew about the college we were attending, and then a post-survey. And obviously we were able to demonstrate that students had learned quite a bit. And then I don't know they stopped doing it, but that was awesome because we did a ton of college trips, even some overnight trips with these mini grants. And they were super easy to write, and I was the only one who was writing for them. Nobody else in the state was doing it. So she was just like, yeah, go as many as you want. You're the only one who's asking. So in a lot of these cases, like you might be the only person asking.
Now, in that case, Kim was at Project U Plus, so that it was a nonprofit, so it was like
Right.
no strings attached.
Yes.
You all may have a few more, but again, use us and not
Yeah.
necessarily. Yeah.
Another opportunity that's this week is the first gen celebration grant. So institutions are encouraged to apply. And I know a lot of our TRIO programs were looking at being the ones to do that. So just a reminder that that is due this week as well.
It's due
That
tomorrow, I
does not.
think.
Yeah, might
It is
be.
like
Yeah,
the
I knew it
17th.
was
It's a weird
sometime
day.
either tomorrow or Thursday or
It's a
something.
weird day. Like it's like a weird. Yeah, tomorrow Thursday, a weird day. But
And that doesn't have to be just like a youth thing. Like it's almost designed to be a little more campus based and like collaborative spirit. So yeah.
And that one had different funding levels this time too. So we did a PDA about it last month in June. So just a reminder for those programs that were looking at doing it, you could do a smaller one or you could go for the bigger amount. But if you were trying to go for all the different amounts, they were only going to potentially award you for one of those amounts. So to figure out with your institution as to what your end goal was there, because there's way fewer grants being awarded. They're just doing some at a higher amount this year, so.
Okay. Well, I thought I think I thought this would be like 20 minutes. So and then I talked for 50, but I forget. I don't often get to like this is just a world we often exist in our own bubble. And I would love to see more like it is extra work. So like I get it. But it's not like you're gonna get paid more just because you get this stuff. You just have more money to spend and more reports to do. But we care for our students and yada yada. So the opportunities are out there. And let us know how we can help support any of this stuff. But appreciate you all being here. And if there's anybody on your like probably by tomorrow, this whole thing will be up on YouTube. So if you want to send it to your team or if your director wasn't here and you're just like, hey, we should definitely do this, or I want to be the one to go find this stuff and do this, like give me the thumbs up. You can at least have them watch the recording, be like, look, Matt said so. So okay, appreciate all of you. Congrats on everybody who's SSS World and got refunded.
Not we
Just
haven't.
rubbing it in for Kim now that we're waiting.
Wow.
Yeah, great fun.
I mean,
I'm feeling good.
any minute now, right? I mean,
Same
we're
with
supposed
Liliana. Liliana's still waiting too.
Yeah.
to wait.
So
All right. Thank you, Matt.
thank
Yeah.
Thank you,
all.
Matt. Appreciate it. See you all
Good to
Thursday.
see everybody.
Good,
Yes.
everybody.
Have a great day.
Take care. Take care.